Welcome back to Wrestling World. Today we'll be taking a look at Sami Zayn's leaked text messages that he posted on Twitter, Keith Lee speaking out, and more. Let's start things off with the Sami Zayn leaked messages situation because this is actually a bit interesting and could lead to something in the future, who knows. So this whole conversation was started when Sami Zayn posted his text messages with one of his cameramen on Twitter. Sami Zayn is continuing to film and record his day-to-day experiences in WWE, and it appears that he was having a conversation with his cameraman about the project. Sami Zayn posted these messages with a caption that said, "My documentary is coming soon, and it's going to be big." The messages he posted showed him sending text messages to the crew member. "Big news, I've touched with Logan Paul on Twitter. He said he's going to check out our documentary. Dude has a massive following. This could really help us get the word out. Are we still on schedule for release?" In which his cameraman responded by saying, "We are." So Sami Zayn is talking about how Logan Paul actually responded to WWE segment. That name dropped him, and Logan said, "We'll see." Sami responded and said, "Hey Logan Paul, not sure if you were just messing around with this tweet, but as someone who knows what it's like to have everyone against you, you should 100% look into this massive conspiracy against me. It's actually pretty shocking stuff." Which Logan responded by saying, "Okay, I'll check it out." So that covers the part of that message, but Logan Paul isn't the interesting part about Sami Zayn's messages. If you look up at the messages that Sami didn't circle, you'll notice some interesting words there as well. There's a message towards the top of the screen that says, "Anyways, I agree, but I don't think we should put that part in the documentary because it could be considered stalking or whatever. You still have the lawyer's number." Sami Zayn responded to everyone talking about that first message from the conversation and had this to say, "FYI, it turns out that there's a very fine line between investigative journalism and stalking." So there's a reason why Sami Zayn left that message in there. It's not clear what exactly he's referring to with that message, but it definitely sounds like the crew and Sami were borderline stalking someone for this documentary. Will WWE show that footage of whatever situation Sami Zayn is referring to in these messages? It's a possibility for sure. We've already seen WWE use bits and pieces of Sami's footage on SmackDown, so we can expect to see a lot more of that footage. Like Sami even revealed himself, the documentary and project is not a joke. Those cameras are actually rolling. They're legitimately filming everything backstage with Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn has said in a few recent interviews that it's still unknown what they're going to do with this footage, but that a real WWE network documentary with all the footage is on the table as a possibility. It'll be really interesting and funny to see everything that they've recorded and how WWE puts it all together for this special presentation. But that really could be an interesting element to throw into Sami Zayn's storyline. Maybe someone doesn't like that he was recording them and demands him to delete the footage and turns it into a legal battle within the storyline for stalking. But what are your thoughts on these messages that Sami Zayn revealed about Logan Paul and the stalking situation? Keith Lee has had it pretty rough since joining the main roster. He was on top of the world in NXT last summer as a double champion. He comes to the main roster a few months later with a lot of hype, and they just have no idea what to do with him. He picked up a clean win over Randy Orton in one of his first few main roster matches, and that was a big deal. But since that win, Keith Lee's direction has sort of been a bit foggy. He had a great championship match with Drew McIntyre during Legends Night, but it's like if they had nothing planned for him after that. Keith Lee originally disappeared a few weeks ago on a rumored quarantine-related matter. He was then brought back and given this big return. But Keith Lee has quietly gone missing once again for several more weeks now. Keith Lee is clearly frustrated with his position, and he's slowly starting to vent on Twitter. His Twitter name alone seems to be a big reference to his current situation in WWE. His Twitter name is Impatient Lee, possibly a reference to him being impatient and just wanting to return to the ring right now. Keith Lee also has been tweeting out some messages about missing the fans and explaining what's going on at a later date. He had this to say, "I hear many of you. I see many of the messages. One day, I will explain it all for the ones true to me. For now, know that I more than appreciate the continued support, and when I return, it will be filled with all the love I have for those that represent this legion. Keith Lee is not injured or going through anything physical as far as everyone knows. His absence just seems to be a creative issue, and it's just another example of WWE not having any real direction for huge NXT talents on the main roster. NXT used to include the superstars winning the NXT title and then coming to the main roster when they lost the title. But take a look around and you'll notice that things aren't like that anymore. Superstars are lingering around NXT even after losing world titles, and they have no intention to leave NXT. Ciampa and Adam Cole have stated several times that they don't want to leave NXT, obviously, because they know what awaits them on the main roster. That's nothing at all. Nothing awaits them on the main roster. That's why we've seen talent like Finn and Ember Moon return to NXT, even after being called up, because they thrive more in NXT and have proper direction there. This is why fans joke around and call the main roster a demotion, because the main roster is known for destroying a majority of recent called up talent. You get called up to the main roster, you have a few matches, pick up a few big wins, and then they run out of ideas for you, and you get lost in the shuffle right away. That's what's happening right now with Keith Lee. And like we mentioned before, he's not the first big NXT talent to get lost in the shuffle on the main roster. We've seen it happen to Ricochet, Ember Moon, Finn, Nakamura, Andrade, Shayna Baszler, Aleister Black, Rusev, Asuka, and so many more. All former NXT stars that were seen as massive attractions in NXT. But then they come to the main roster and there's no direction for them, and their character loses a bit of spark they had in NXT. This is what fans also fear will happen with Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley is getting hyped right now on Raw. She is this massively talented young superstar coming from a hot run in NXT, and fans are just hoping that she's treated and booked well on the main roster. Hopefully Rhea Ripley is being called up with a proper direction and story in mind, and not WWE just winging it and putting her in random matches with no real proper endgame or direction, similar to what they did with Keith Lee. Keith Lee had this big hyped up debut, but looking back at it, it just felt like he had no real direction the entire time. It was just random short feuds, random matches, 6-man tag matches, and then he disappeared. We've seen this happen so much that fans are extremely fearful for Rhea Ripley's main roster debut. Don't get it confused. There's been a handful of NXT talents that have had great success on the main roster, like Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and others. But the number of NXT superstars that WWE has failed on the main roster is much larger than the number of NXT superstars that saw great success on the main roster. So hopefully, Keith Lee and everyone else that's new to the main roster get some better treatment in the coming months. What are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments, don't forget to subscribe, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.